Hello, my name is Stella, and I am 35 years old. After my mother died, my father remarried. His new wife swept in like a queen. My father and his new wife tried to snatch the house my mother had given me, but they underestimated me. I turned their trick on them, leaving them both stunned. When my 70-year-old mother died of an unexpected stroke last year, I inherited the house I grew up in. Although losing Mom was painful, her meticulous planning helped me stay stable during this trying period. I have spent almost 20 years developing my business in financial consulting. When I was 7, my parents divorced. Even though they shared custody, my mother and I were always closer. I never felt like a priority to my 73-year-old father, who was either preoccupied with business or dating. Since Mom had sacrificed her promising real estate career to raise me and support Dad's professional development in corporate finance, she acquired ownership of the property in lieu of alimony after the divorce. It has always been more than just a place to live. In this large, colonial-style home in the Massachusetts suburbs, there are memories of Mom everywhere, from the yard where we spent many weekends planting her favorite roses to the kitchen where she taught me how to make her renowned apple pie. Since my parents purchased it in the late 1970s, the house itself, a clean 4-bedroom building with a wraparound porch, has served as our family's residence. As a child, I saw my mother make this house a cozy and inviting place. She maintained an amazing home for me while re-entering the real estate market, even after the divorce. As Dad's corporate career took off, his visits became more and more infrequent. Although Dad would attend important occasions like birthdays and graduations, our bond never grew to the degree I observed in my classmates' bonds with their fathers. The terms of the divorce settlement had been simple: Dad no longer had to pay alimony, and Mom received the house. She had taken care of everything at home as he ascended the corporate ladder, supporting him during his early career. Instead of looking for continued support after their divorce, she insisted on keeping the house. She would often declare, "A home is more valuable than monthly checks." Her choice turned out to be sensible. She made sure I had a secure home life while she reconstructed her real estate career. My father invited his 61-year-old lover, Hannah, to our Christmas celebration 2 years ago. She arrived with her 2 kids from a prior relationship with her high school lover, Lily, 41, and Alice, 39. Similar to how their mother initially came across, the daughters were quiet and reticent. Hannah complimented Mom's decorating style and asked insightful questions about our family's customs, demonstrating her sincere enthusiasm in getting to know us. Over the next few months, we gradually but favorably grew closer to Hannah and her daughters. Hannah was considerate of our preferences, calling ahead to ask if she might bring something unique to our sporadic family gatherings. Despite their lack of warmth, her daughters were always courteous and appeared to value being a part of our family get-togethers. Despite Hannah's presence in our life, Mom remained incredibly kind. She would reply, "Everyone deserves a chance at happiness." But occasionally, I could see a glimmer of grief in her eyes as Dad and Hannah would depart together. In retrospect, I saw how strong she must have been to greet them with such warmth. The loss was abrupt and terrible. When Mom died last spring, she suffered a stroke while sleeping. The doctors claimed it was a peaceful but far too early death. She was planning to renovate the garden that weekend, and we had just talked about it over dinner the previous evening. Although I was devastated by the suddenness of her death, she had planned for everything because she was a realistic person. We learned that Mom had revised her estate plans around the time I turned 18. During the will reading, I was left the house and most of her possessions. A note detailing her choices, specifically regarding the house, was also left behind. "This home has been your anchor through every storm. Keep it as your safe harbor, but never let it keep you from sailing toward your dreams." When the funeral arrangements were being made, Dad and Hannah provided the proper support. Mom's large photo albums for the memorial exhibit were organized by her children, and Hannah helped arrange the wake's refreshments. But after the will reading, I saw a change in Dad's attitude. He made multiple remarks about how he and Mom had selected the property together and how he had managed all the significant renovations over the years. His congratulations on my inheritance felt forced. The weeks that followed the funeral were filled with paperwork and last-minute changes. Mom had set aside things especially for Dad, including his wedding jewelry and the presents he had given her throughout the years. I assumed he would find meaning in this gesture, but he appeared more preoccupied with the house. Because of his early foresight in selecting this site, he casually commented on how the area had improved and how the property's value had gone up. I stayed in the house and took solace in following Mom's rituals. Even though I was never as good with roses as she was, her garden became my weekend project. In an attempt to create a new normal for myself, I turned one of the spare bedrooms into a home office. Because my job as a financial advisor permitted me to work from home to some extent, it felt like a natural change. Dad called to tell me that he and Hannah were engaged about 6 months ago. In order to save money on hotel expenses, he proposed that they spend the weeks before the wedding at my place. The house was spacious, and Hannah's daughters were working from home. My father made it seem like a win-win situation by offering to split household expenses and utilities. A month ago, the arrangement began, and at first, it seemed like a good thing. Conversations over coffee in the morning and family dinners in the evening filled the house. Hannah showcased her culinary skills, frequently cooking for everyone. Although her daughters were still reserved, they appeared to be warming up to the idea of our blended family. The house started to feel less empty than it had after Mom's passing. Then, 3 days before the wedding, Dad requested a private meeting in Mom's favorite place, her garden. He revealed that he wanted them to live here permanently. Their stay wasn't just for the wedding. He claimed he was concerned about me living alone in such a big house, pretending his request was for my well-being. "Your mother would have wanted you to have a family around you," he said. But I wasn't sure Mom would have agreed. The request stirred complex emotions in me. Part of me missed the family dynamic I had grown accustomed to over the past month. The presence of others made the house feel warmer, and Hannah had been incredibly gracious. However, something about Dad's approach felt off. I kept replaying his past comments about the house's value and his subtle remarks about its worth. I told him I needed time to consider my options and would make a decision after the wedding rather than answering immediately. His reaction was telling. Before he could mask it with understanding, a flicker of irritation crossed his face. It reminded me of my childhood, when his priorities and my needs clashed. Now, with the wedding only days away, I find myself at a crossroads. After the ceremony, they plan to stay for a few more days before returning to Houston. A part of me wonders if I should allow them to move in permanently. We've proven that we can coexist peacefully, and having people around makes the house feel less lonely. But I can't shake the nagging feeling that something isn't right. Red flags include Dad's fixation on the property's value, his subtle frustration at my hesitation, and his repeated attempts to remind me of his role in acquiring the house. Hannah has been almost too perfect, and I question whether their intentions go beyond just family unity. A part of me feels guilty for questioning them. Isn't this what families do? Support each other, come together, and rebuild from the broken pieces of the past. Yet, another part of me, the part that inherited Mom's pragmatic nature, warns me to be cautious. Despite my career in financial consulting, where I help others make sound financial choices, this situation has left me second-guessing my judgment. My usually clear thinking is clouded by the complexities of family ties. I wonder, does sharing an inherited home with family always come with this much conflict? Should I trust my instincts, or am I letting past disappointments influence my perception of the present? First update. After my last post, things spiraled out of control. The wedding took place at the Grand Hotel downtown this past weekend. Despite my reservations, I helped with the preparations and even gave a polite toast. Everything seemed picture perfect, with Hannah's daughters as bridesmaids. Then, the morning after the wedding, around 8 a.m., I woke up to an eerily silent house. At first, I assumed everyone was simply sleeping in after the festivities. But when I went downstairs to make coffee, I found a hastily written note on the kitchen counter. Gone for our honeymoon. Be back in a week. No prior discussion. No mention of their departure. They had vanished, yet all their belongings were still scattered across the guest rooms. I tried calling both my father and Hannah. Every call went straight to voicemail. Hours later, Hannah finally answered. Gone was her usual charm. Did we forget to tell you? Oops, my bad, she said, her voice laced with insincerity. When I expressed my frustration about not being informed, she snapped. You're not a child anymore. We needed some privacy, your father has a new family now. The conversation quickly escalated. She had the audacity to tell me they planned to remodel their rooms when they returned and that I should get over myself and tidy up the house before their arrival. At that moment, something inside me snapped. For the next few hours, I meticulously photographed and recorded everything, their belongings, the state of the house, and even the note they left. Then, I called a locksmith and changed all the locks. Once everything was documented, I packed up their things, stored them in waterproof containers, and placed them on the covered porch. Then, I sent a message to Hannah and my father. Your belongings are packed and on the porch. You have until Sunday to collect them. Anything left after that will be donated to charity. Do not attempt to enter the house. The locks have been changed. If you try, I will call the police. The reaction was instant and explosive. My phone was flooded with messages, some guilt-tripping, others furious. How could you do this to your family? Even Hannah's daughters chimed in, sending messages accusing me of tearing the family apart. 2 weeks have passed since my last post, and the full truth has finally come to light. What I've discovered explains their desperate attempts to move in, and it's worse than I ever imagined. Yesterday, my father's former coworker, a family friend for over 30 years, reached out to me. She revealed that my father had been fired 3 months ago for mishandling company funds. So, he wasn't just taking a break from work, as he had claimed. Instead, he had been making reckless financial decisions without proper authorization, leading to massive losses. Their financial situation is far worse than I thought. My father drained his entire retirement savings to cover the $445,000 wedding at the Grand Hotel. Then, they spent an additional $30,000 on a luxurious 2-week honeymoon in the Maldives, which he funded by selling off his investments. When they got engaged last year, Hannah quit her job as a real estate agent, fully confident in my father's 6-figure salary and their plan to move into what they had been referring to as their future family home. Yes. That's what they called my house. They had already sold most of their furniture and given notice on their Houston residence, assuming they'd be living with me permanently. That's why their belongings are still sitting on my porch. They literally have nowhere else to put them. Mutual acquaintances have since told me that my father and Hannah had been spreading a completely false story about me. They told people that this was their house and that they were generously letting me stay here temporarily out of respect for my late mother. The truth, of course, is that I am a successful financial consultant who makes 6 figures of my own income, and the house is legally mine. And then came the most unsettling revelation. My father wasn't just fired because of bad investments, he had been acting erratically at work for months. He made grandiose claims to clients and became furious when questioned about his financial tactics. While no one knows for sure, some believe he was trying to cover up massive personal losses, possibly even attempting financial fraud. As for Hannah, her behavior now makes complete sense. Her performance as the perfect homemaker was a calculated act. She had been bragging to friends that she would never have to work again if they moved in with me. She even shared Pinterest boards with them, planning renovations for my mother's garden. Even their honeymoon photos now paint a different picture, one of extravagant spending that was completely unsustainable. Every magical moment they shared together was funded by my father's exhausted retirement fund. When they returned from their trip and realized their belongings were still outside, they tried a new approach. Hannah called me, fake crying, saying that wedding stress had made her act out. My father followed up, trying to sell the idea of family unity and suggesting that we could support each other during difficult times. In doing so, they inadvertently revealed their true intentions. They never planned to just move in temporarily. They expected me to eventually sign over the house to them. They spoke in vague terms about how we should combine our family resources for everyone's benefit, which, of course, meant my inheritance would become their financial safety net. And then I discovered something even worse. They had already spoken to a real estate agent about financing options and the home's potential value. They even contacted a contractor about future renovations, posing as the homeowners. That was the last straw. Following my lawyer's advice, I am sending them a formal cease and desist letter for misrepresenting the ownership of my home. If they continue their harassment, I will take legal action. Looking back, I feel so grateful that I trusted my instincts. I almost let guilt and nostalgia cloud my judgment, but their true colors revealed themselves the moment I said no. My mother used to say, "You don't see a person's true character in good times. You see it in how they handle disappointment." She was right. I'm sharing this update in case anyone else is dealing with manipulative family members. Trust your gut. Set your boundaries. And never let anyone guilt you into sacrificing what is rightfully yours. This situation has finally come to an end, and the way it unfolded is almost poetic. When we last left off, my father and Hannah were living in a low-cost hotel, rapidly running out of money and options. Their complete financial desperation had become undeniable. Every cent of my father's severance pay had gone toward the wedding, and the combined cost of the wedding and honeymoon had completely wiped out his retirement savings. With no home to return to in Houston and Hannah out of work, they were stuck, scrambling for solutions. Meanwhile, I continued recording everything, their attempts to manipulate me, their social media posts, and even reports from neighbors. Several neighbors told me that Hannah had been surveying my garden while I was at work, discussing her remodeling plans as if she already owned the property. One even claimed that, without my knowledge, she had invited contractors over to inspect my home. Their arrogance was astounding. As their financial reality hit, Hannah stopped posting lavish updates and instead shifted to vague, passive-aggressive posts like hidden blessings and family betrayal. My father, on the other hand, went from furious demands to frantic pleas. Relatives began reaching out, urging me to help him since he was still my father. But here's the thing, I'm a financial consultant. I know that bailing out someone who refuses to take accountability only enables their bad decisions. More importantly, he and Hannah didn't just ask for help, they tried to coerce me out of my own home. Although I hoped to avoid legal action, I continued working with my lawyer to document everything. I also upgraded my home security system and informed my neighbors to remain on alert. And then, something unexpected happened. Hannah's ex-boyfriend stepped in. Apparently, her daughters had secretly contacted their father, Daniel, and told him about their mother's situation. Unlike my father, Daniel is a successful businessman in Houston who has maintained a distant but amicable relationship with Hannah over the years, primarily for their daughter's sake. He was shocked by what he learned. Last Tuesday, I received an email from Daniel. He apologized for reaching out but wanted to confirm some details because Hannah's story didn't match what their daughters had told him. After we spoke, I could tell he was horrified. He had already been growing concerned over Hannah's increasingly desperate social media posts, but the final straw was discovering that she and my father had been actively scheming to take my home. From that moment, things moved quickly. Daniel confronted Hannah and offered to help, but only if she left town immediately. From what I've heard, she reluctantly accepted, realizing that she had no other choice. My father, equally out of options, went with her. And just like that, they were gone. Looking back, I can't believe how close I came to letting guilt manipulate me into making a terrible decision. My father has always been the kind of man who prioritizes his own wants over everything else. I see now that Hannah simply enabled and amplified that behavior. My mother used to say, "True character isn't revealed in easy times, it's revealed in how people handle disappointment." She was right. Even though this entire experience has been painful, I'm grateful that I stood my ground. I protected my home, my finances, and my peace. More than anything, I've learned that family isn't just about blood, it's about who respects you, supports you, and doesn't try to manipulate you for their own gain. Thank you to everyone who supported me through this. Your advice gave me the confidence to trust my instincts, and I'll always be grateful for that. For now, I'm focusing on rebuilding, healing, and moving forward. This chapter of my life has finally come to a close, and the way it ended was nothing short of poetic justice. As it turns out, Hannah had been applying for short-term loans under her children's names, potentially damaging their credit scores. That revelation set off a chain of events that led to an unexpected intervention. Daniel, her ex-boyfriend and the father of her daughters, stepped in, not just to offer financial assistance but to enforce accountability. Under his conditions, he paid for their return to Houston and arranged for Hannah to restart her career, securing her interviews with several real estate firms he had connections with. But there was a catch: she had to stop trying to take my home. Their carefully constructed illusion collapsed spectacularly. Daniel made sure their entire social circle knew the truth, that the story about them owning my house was a complete fabrication. In response to Hannah's social media posts about their family home, he even publicly corrected her, in a firm but diplomatic way. After the humiliation of his financial mismanagement being exposed, my father finally dropped the act. In a rare moment of honesty, during a recorded phone call, with his consent, he admitted that the entire marriage had been orchestrated around the plan to take my house. Hannah had convinced him that together, they could pressure me into selling or sharing ownership. The full extent of their manipulation became even clearer when Hannah's own daughters, feeling guilty for staying silent, leaked screenshots of group chats. These messages showed how calculated their actions had been. Hannah's deliberate efforts to be the perfect stepmother. Their decision to announce their marriage at the exact time they knew I was most emotionally vulnerable. Their discussions about various ways to manipulate me. Daniel didn't just pay for their move back to Houston, he also ensured boundaries were set. He covered their first month's rent and moving expenses on the condition that they cease all contact with me unless I initiated it. Sign legal documents confirming they had no claim to my property. Their departure was telling. Instead of acknowledging their failed scheme, they pretended it was a voluntary move. They sent out a mass email to friends and family, claiming they were heading back to Houston for exciting new opportunities. Hannah even had the audacity to post photos of their departure, captioned with sentimental nonsense about closing chapters and new beginnings, complete with hashtags about luxury living. Yesterday, my security cameras caught them making one last slow drive past my house. They didn't stop, but they lingered for a moment, perhaps taking one final look at the home they had schemed so hard to take. Now, it's finally quiet. My neighbors have been incredibly supportive throughout this ordeal, and some have even apologized for believing Hannah's lies. This experience has also opened my eyes to how common family property disputes are. I've had so many people share their own stories of betrayal and financial manipulation. To help process everything, I've joined a support group for people coping with family estrangement. The emotions are complex: anger at their deception, sadness over what little relationship I had with my father, but most of all, relief that I no longer have to endure their manipulation. And now, I'm moving forward. The house feels different, peaceful, not empty. Instead of dwelling on the past, I've started remodeling, focusing on creating new memories rather than being haunted by old ones. My mother's garden, which had been neglected during all this, is blooming again. To honor her, I've joined a local gardening club to properly care for her prized roses. This experience has also strengthened my career. As a financial consultant, I now have first-hand experience in how family dynamics can impact financial decisions. While I don't share my personal story with clients, I'm better equipped to help others navigate similar situations. It's ironic, really. My father, a man who worked in finance, destroyed his own retirement through reckless decisions, while I, the daughter he never had time for, secured my future through careful planning. My mother always said, the best investment is education. She was right. It allowed me to recognize the red flags early and protect myself. Looking ahead, I'm focusing on healthy relationships. The friends who stood by me through this have become like family. Even the person I'm dating now is genuinely more interested in me than my assets, a refreshing change. If I've learned anything, it's that family isn't about shared DNA or legal titles, it's about respect, integrity, and genuine care for each other's well-being. My mother understood this, which is why she worked so hard to safeguard my inheritance. To everyone who followed my journey and offered support, thank you. Your advice gave me the strength to stand my ground, even when I doubted myself. For those facing similar family betrayals, trust your instincts, document everything, and never compromise your boundaries out of guilt. Unless something significant happens, I don't anticipate posting any further updates. My father and Hannah are now starting over in Houston, without access to my home or my money. Every now and then, Daniel checks in, mostly to ensure they're honoring their agreement to stay away. Mom would be proud, not because I was tough, but because I stayed true to my values and protected what she worked so hard to build. And that's what matters most in the end. Thank you for watching.